And will you train me, Mr. Miyagi? First of all, I'm Pat effin' Morita, you nutsack.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Badger Nerdworks Presents We Watched a Movie. I'm Brandon, this is Finn. Today we watched The Karate Kid. This is the classic Karate Kid, not the one with the Jaden Smith and the Chan.
Jackie Chan,
Love me some Jackie Chan, but no, this is a classic one.
Right.
1984.
Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, Pat fucking Morita.
Crane
the deal.
kicks.
Yes,
Yeah.
crane kicks. Exactly.
Wax on,
Wax off. Exactly.
Alright, so this movie, it's almost hard to talk about because it's so iconic and it's the Karate Kid, man. What do you think has made it so iconic? Like, why do you think we're like, so many years later that this movie, like, still resonates when you watch it?
It's a classic underdog story. I mean, that's baseline right there. It is. It's a classic underdog story, and everybody who's ever felt weird or out of place, or they've moved to a new town. I grew up watching this movie almost as a guide to life because of the fact that, like, my dad, because of the nature of the oil field business, we moved around a lot, and I'd lived. By the time I was 13, man, I think I'd lived in like 6 or 7 different towns and gone to like 6 or 7 different schools, So, I mean,
Right.
I was trying to make friends about once every 2 years just because we moved when the work moved, And so, like, anybody who's ever had that experience you go to a new place and you meet new people and you're outcast or whatever, and you are the underdog, you can watch this movie and relate to Daniel.
Right. It's a fish out of water story. And like, I think we've all been there, and I think that's totally it. I think that this has a very vulnerable character that most of us can relate to. He comes under the threat of physical violence, which anyone who's gone to the American school system has been under the threat of physical violence and bullying at school. Right. It kind of happens, or you've seen it. Like, it's a reality, and this movie kind of dealt with it in a very 1980s. You're just a kid. You're expected to just roll with it.
Yeah.
We were like evolved enough to acknowledge bullying, but not evolved enough to have adults get involved unless they know karate.
Right.
Like,
unless they know karate and are apparently like PTSD suffering Vietnam War vets.
If a kid comes into school is beat up as Danny does at any given time, Daniel is just like beat to a pulp, and no teacher's like, hey, who's beating you to a pulp?
Dude? Right, yeah.
Like, do we need to get some, like, cops involved?
No, of course not. It's 1984, and they're looking the other way,
It's cool, I was just pushed down the hill. It ain't no thing. It's some childish bullying.
Right, Reagan is in office. They just want to get home and drink themselves into a stupor, because they didn't make it as a writer. So, I mean, they're not paying attention to Daniel's
It's a time and place story, and I think that's part of it. It's like so a time and place, because this is
definitely,
like this is a cool place to be when it is Los Angeles.
Ownership of this movie and the original fandom of this movie, that's exactly what it is. It is a time and a place, and it is a bit of nostalgia for all of us who either were children when this movie came out, or anywhere from that to, the elderly that are still alive today, 30 years later, who watched this movie and took a shining to it, because that's what it is. It's nostalgia for that era, for that time period.
It was like, all right, if there were Valley Girls who kind of blew up and were the idea of this little enclave of girls in California that are like the pinnacle of cool, then like Karate Kid was like, what are their dudes doing?
Right.
Oh, are they in Cobra Kai karate?
They're doing karate.
They're doing karate.
Well, then let's make a movie about that.
We should do that.
Right.
They'll kick and punch each other.
Right,
It'll be
exactly.
very entertaining.
Right. It'll be great. Well, this movie, I do want to say this about this movie. It's like, I noticed recently rewatching it again, is that this movie is really made in the editing room. And like the beats and the way that it emotionally pulls at you is done right there in the editing. Because for the most part, the rest of this story, outside of the stuff that they add with Miyagi, which is strangely really nuanced for an Asian character in that time period. Oh, yeah. You know, like, that's really, like, they go into some depth and some, like, I mean, there's a commentary on, you know, Japanese-American internment, you know, during World War II with, you know, the fact that his wife died in Manzanar while he was over in Germany fighting.
When Daniel finds him drinking and he just kind of finds out about his
and he finds out. And it's done so simply, and part of that, again, is in the editing of that scene and how they construct those beats and those rhythms. And those
it's one of those things that Mr. Miyagi would never talk about when he was sober.
Right.
He's not that kind of person. That kind of dude. And Daniel just kind of like stumbled upon him in this moment, and it kind of hits this moment sometimes. And like you kind of see Mr. Miyagi, who's like training Daniel, and like the rock of this movie like kind of crumble just a little, and you see his faults and his,
you see the cracks
well, inside of him personally, and you see his strength as well. I mean, it's
because,
really more...
Because the fact of the matter is,
dude, it works better than it ought to.
That dude killed a lot of Nazis. That little Japanese dude, murder-faced.
Because once again, we can't have any movie where we're not murdering Nazis. We're just
because Nazis should be murdered always.
I'm just saying it automatically makes you like a good guy.
Of this show, we do endorse that. Nazis should be flat out murder-faced, or at the very least Indiana Jones punched.
Who knows what...
But yeah, I mean, that guy was a combat veteran who was an exemplary combat veteran. He has a Congressional Medal of Courage, dude.
Well,
you don't get that.
It brings a lot of his questionable methodology and stuff, because like Mr. Miyagi and his weird training is very questionable.
Right.
Like he's never trained anyone else before. Like he states that, like he's like, oh no, I might have trained my kid, but you know,
and he trains him by teaching him jobs.
Yeah,
and using those jobs
that's like physical training.
Skills. Well, but that's
he just needs to develop strength.
That's all karate. No, he develops the moves with those jobs. That's all karate is.
Yes,
and that's essentially what he breaks it down to. Is he's like, it's just motor skill movement, and you keep doing that one thing over and over again. When the moment's right, your body will just go, I do
breathe
this.
In, breathe out.
You know, right. That's why
it's breathing. It's
that's why
like
he keeps telling him to breathe in and breathe out. Man, that's one of those things, because you are a martial artist as well. Right. Like, I'm a martial artist, you're a martial artist. We both have some amount of experience with doing martial arts, okay? And I know your coach, I know your sensei or something has said that to you. Hey, remember to breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. And I know when I'm on the BJJ mat, there are times when I will stop because I'm so concentrated on trying to gain position or trying to get a move going that I will literally forget to breathe.
Okay.
And that was what Miyagi was doing with that, of instilling that idea of continue to breathe, do your motions, you're going to win, you know.
I think he was, I totally think that this movie, like, you shouldn't read into it like actual martial arts, because like
no, of course not. It's philosophy, though. But like, yeah, I understand.
There. What I always took it as is it's like more like the 36 chambers of kung fu, right? Where you like do this thing, and then like your muscles develop, and then they teach you like the moves that correlate with it. You're like, oh, I developed the physical strength to do this thing. Yeah. Right, and like even inside that, like
the muscle memory.
Yeah, after like a week of like PT, you're like way harder than you were at the beginning, and that's what it was. It was like that his little karate, and I think part of it is to build him to that breaking point to see how far he can push him. And I think that moment, it's important that Daniel, when he gets to a point where he freaks out on Miyagi, he's like, "I'm just doing your chores," because he has him doing wax on, wax off, paint the thing, paint his house.
Miyagi was expecting him also to break way sooner than that, I bet.
Right. And like, well, when it breaks is when it breaks, and he was just going to push him. He didn't even show up the last day. Like, he was kind of almost pushing it along. Yeah. And it's so that you get to this moment where you're ready to be molded. Right. And I think that's part of the Miyagi thing, is like, it's a methodology to like break you and then remake you.
Well,
and
of
like,
course, Well, and he learns that, also somewhat probably through the U.S. military and his training there.
Right,
because
totally.
that's literally what the U.S. military does.
Oh, yeah.
It breaks you to remake you.
Right.
To remake you into a killing
You run someone physically until they become mentally pliable,
Right.
and then you reform them,
Right.
and in that way, I think it's real cool because we all acknowledge the inherentness of what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, and that contrasts perfectly with the sensei from the Cobra Kai school and with his training methodology and with his experiences and what shaped him. Because if you look at it, this is a guy who had been in Vietnam. He had obviously been an exemplary soldier in Vietnam.
Right.
He was in special forces. There's pictures of him in his uniform overseas in the school, So obviously whatever he did was exemplary enough for him to want to put it on display. And yet from that, he took away a different way of life and a different kind of this is almost like a contrast between the experiences of the baby boomers, our parents' generation, and their experience coming home from war versus our grandparents' generation and what their experience coming home from war.
Right. Vietnam versus World War II. And whether you came back and you felt we went and we won and we came home.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it no more. Because, Miyagi doesn't talk about it unless it's
Miyagi equals Greatest Generation. They didn't talk about it. They came home. They had gotten their parade. They acknowledged that, hey, there was this bad thing that was happening. Vietnam was different.
Kind of still angry. Didn't really leave the war behind. Brought it back with
they didn't
them,
get any closure. They didn't get any closure. They got, the idea that they got spit on, that's debatable. Did people actually call them baby killer and spit on them and whatnot? That's very debatable. But there was certainly an ennui about what was going on over there. And there was a disillusionment as well with okay, so with World War II, you have a war that, moralistically you can look at because of what we stopped the Germans from doing and because of,
I think you said it perfectly there. It stopped.
Yeah. Well,
it stopped.
That too.
I think there was a definitive conclusion, and there was someone who surrendered. You're
well, and we
won.
We won. We did.
And
lose.
and there wasn't this kind of ambiguity.
We lost Vietnam.
It's
There's not really ambiguity about it. We lost Vietnam. We got our asses kicked by the Vietnamese, and we got pushed out.
It didn't go well.
It did not go well. It did not go well. That's why.
But that's hard. That's hard. And
hard
you see that level of aggression, that desire to not lose again, and that win thing because it wasn't fulfilled.
That's the whole exactly.
Takes over Cobra Kai.
Right.
And Miyagi's trying to come to reason, and he's trying to be his bonsai tree and cut off the parts of himself, whereas he's trying to grow the parts of himself that are negative and still scared. Well, I
know that guy. Right.
The Cobra
Kai instructor. Yeah, he's right. Exactly. He's giving into Kreese is giving into the to those darker tendencies and the dark passenger, and is allowing that dark passenger to drive the car more often than Miyagi is, who's actually trying to come to peace within himself, balance. As he told Danielson.
It's one of those things. This movie wouldn't happen the way it did then for so many reasons. Cell phones, litigation. It's just a different world.
Yeah.
Like I said, between the teachers again.
Which is probably a lot of the reason why when they remade it, they had to take it over to China. Just because there were ability for them to do more things that you wouldn't necessarily in the story be able to do and pull off here. That's just my suspicion on that.
Well, because it had to be cool and fun, right? But then it had to be dark and deep, and it had to do all these different little things, and it had to do them just right. And they had kind of
well, but that's just it though.
Production.
It didn't have to do any of that because nobody thought anything of this movie in the beginning.
Right.
They just put it together, and they were just it'll just be a little.
Well, to be what it is,
a little teen young adult romance movie.
That's what it should have been.
And right. It'll throw it away for the summer, and there we go, and then on we're moving on.
These should have been forgettable performances.
Right.
These should have been the lines aren't great killers across the board,
No.
and like it's a lot of music-driven montage scenes
Right,
to
the
make
most
you
memorable
believe
stuff, the stuff
the
that people
behaviors
remember
and stuff.
are Miyagi's
Like,
lines.
because why does she like Daniel? I don't know. We always
Yeah,
have
she
just like a
just does.
montage, and maybe he
Right.
bounced a ball on his knee.
Yeah.
Like,
he
you know?
bounced the ball on his knee and won her heart. And that was it, because that's all we needed in the 80s, that was...
Because they were kids.
Was all, right, exactly.
They were both on the
kids.
beach at the same time.
Right, and
He hit the
just-
ball. Her ex-boyfriend pushed him over. Nothing hotter
They were
than
down.
that.
They were down from John Travolta and what's her name from Grease.
Right.
They were just down the beach from the two of them, and then the moon was right. But I mean, it didn't have to be any of those things. It just ends up being those things, and it's just the benefit really of a lot of it is Pat Morita.
Right.
A lot of it is Pat Morita. A lot of it is the guy who played Kreese. He plays such a great overarching kind of, the main villain.
I agree. He's just naturally intimidating.
Yeah.
Just look at him. He doesn't have to do much.
Right, he doesn't even have to do
like
much.
he doesn't have
And
a
then
lot
he
of lines, but the
adds
ones he
on top
has,
of that, right.
he makes work. Like that could have
Right.
been a very undynamic role.
Yeah.
Like if he wasn't like genuinely intimidating when
but
he's
he's
trying. And
every
Miyagi does a
asshole
great job
football
of
coach
staring
you've
him
ever
right in the
known.
eyes.
He's-
That's a great moment.
Oh, I love one of my favorite moments is that moment when they're in the school and like they've made that deal that Daniel won't get beat up by the Cobra Kai guys until the tournament, and then they're like leaving, and Miyagi just does that one arm back to Daniel, like, okay, go. This dude just basically threatened to kill both of us. We need to leave. He's fucking crazy, and we're out. And it's just kind of that simple like one arm going behind, and like Miyagi never leaves, like you say, the eye contact with Kreese.
Yeah, he does it
the
perfectly.
entire time.
You're like,
and like,
sold it.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, again, it's a lot of it is just in the editing and the way that they piece this movie together with the bits that they had that made it great. Again, it's the underdog story appeal of it.
And
it is, it's a classic morality
I
tale.
think that this is. It rides the coattails of Rocky. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
without
it's hard.
a doubt. Yeah.
It's hard to not look at the end of this movie and
definitely.
be like,
well, and
Rocky.
And
That's
okay,
how that goes.
And
You
I
kind of
don't
have,
think
like-
this is weird or borderline even racially insensitive to say this, but there was a fascination with Japan and with Japanese culture at that time in the 80s, in the mid 80s. For whatever reason, there was this. I mean, you've got the movie Gung Ho comes out around that time. Karate Kid. There's this kind of thing with with studying the East, studying Japan and whatnot, and Asian cultures and whatnot. And so it was riding kind of the wave of that as well. But again, it's a Rocky for that kind of thing,
Right, but far more so than like a Jap, like, because this is just straight Americana. Like, this ending final, it has that flavor on top. But man, like the way they construct it, where like you really see him overcome in the first bout, where like he's getting run over. Daniel's just getting run over by his first opponent in the final. The final tournament. Yeah, because if you don't know, this ends in a tournament where Daniel beats all the Cobra Kai guys.
Not
and
all
wins.
of them. He beats two of them. He beats
by
Dutch,
virtue of winning all of it. He beats all.
Okay,
of it.
yeah, sure.
Number one.
But technically speaking, he beats Dutch and he beats Johnny, and that's it.
right. I bet you their
Dutch
sensei feels like they all lost him.
I think he fights the black guy from Cobra Kai.
I bet you the way Cobra Kai thinks.
I think he fights the token black guy and Dutch and maybe three guys. But exactly.
Right, because it's a tournament. He doesn't have to win too many.
Yeah, no doubt.
But so they do a great job of the final fight sequence. It kind of shows you the tournament, and you see the first battle, so you get to learn it with Daniel as he's thrown into it brand new. But his training works.
Pickpocketing that bag and being like, "Hey, that's not the way you spelled the name." Hey, here, take that black bag.
They're not legitimate.
Right?
They're not legitimate. They should have had that stuff taken from them at the end of the movie because they did not at all have their ducks in a row.
Legitimate school.
That's not how that works. You don't let people kick other people in the face.
Right? You weren't even registered with the American Karate Federation at all.
So basically, what I'm saying though is it follows that Rocky thing where you see Rocky finally get Creed once points, and you're like, oh man, he has a chance to do this. And then like it goes to like montage, and it like skips through the rounds and the back and forth of it. And Daniel gets hurt, but he beats some real cool guys that do jump kicks and stuff.
Oh, no, that's right. It's the one dude, it's the one dude who kind of looks like my uncle did in the 70s. That's the one that he fights that like kicks him in the leg and shit. And,
and then, of course, it ends in a crane kick.
Yeah, it ends in a crane kick to the face, which was heard across time and entertainment.
Totally unreasonable way to end a fight. Like, that's not...
Well, that was Karate Kid. Thanks again for coming and checking it out with us. It is a great classic film, and we do enjoy it. Until next time, you guys keep watching movies, and we'll see you later.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody, for watching that episode of Badger Nerd Works. We watched a movie. My name is Finn. This is Brandon. Y'all come back and see us again, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all of our videos. Click the bell icon down there below to be notified when our next video comes out. And over here to the side is more of our videos. You should check them out. Come back and see us again, y'all.
Bye.
Yeah, he never, like that.
I'm just that guy. I'm that guy who has the phone on while you're taping. Because I'm a jerk.
Because I'm that guy.
Luckily, we're that guy with editing software.
Right, exactly. We are that guy. we are that guy with Adobe Studios.
You're saying something about Vietnam or something.
Yes.
All right.
But
Going into the end of the bump.
But yeah, no. I mean, like, yeah, he doesn't talk about it. That one time when he gets drunk, and you like we were saying, you see the cracks, and you see that this weathered rock of a man, it does have cracks in there because of the kind of stuff that...
No, I'm the asshole.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That is definitely going in the bump. This whole sequence.
Maybe the new bump. All right.
But yes,